Hello. The Divine Code reading for December 17th, pages 385 and 386. We are in the chapter Details and Examples of the Prohibition of Murder, and subchapter on abortion. Topic number 11. That's the second topic of the subchapter on abortion. An embryo is not considered to be a human life until 40 days after conception. Prior to this, its substance is considered like mere water. Tractate Burokot 47b and Shokan Oric Yoradea 305-23. So the status of the embryo for the first month, or for a little bit more than the first month, is not considered on a status of a human life until it's developed to a certain stage that's counted as 40 days in the halakhic material. However, during this time, it is still forbidden within the prohibition of murder to cause an abortion, and God will seek justice for the destruction of the embryo. It is clear that in this case, as for any murder, the blood of one murdered of the would-be descendants are all avenged, as God said to Cain, Genesis chapter 4, verse 10, "The voice of your brother's bloods, they will cry out to me." That's based on Tractate Sanhedrin 37a. Rashi explains this verse as his blood and the blood of his would-be descendants. So at that point, it's still considered it's considered a would-be descendant at that point. And that would-be descendant is crying out to God. The blood of that aborted would-be descendant is still crying out to God. It would not be a court. The court would not get involved, but it's still forbidden for a person to have an abortion in the first month. But it would not be something that the court would intervene with. At least not the Torah court. It may be that under the laws of Dinim, as in many of these areas, the laws of Dinim, the court might get involved. But it would not be a Torah-based law at that point. Nevertheless, within 40 days after the egg is fertilized, the moment of conception, a killer of the embryo is not liable to capital punishment in the court of law. See responsa of Havot Yair, chapter 31, who gives no permission for abortion even in the first 40 days, even for an embryo conceived out of wedlock. Sitz Eleazar, volume 9, chapter 51, permits this for a Jew. Igrit Moshe Koshen Mishpat, volume 2, 39.3, states that for a Gentile, this is permitted in a dire case. So there can be understandable reasons for abortion in the first 40 days. It's the leaning would be to say it's not to be done, but because it's more of it's not a clear Torah case at that point, so there can be reasons to work with it. That might allow it. Also concerning this, see responsa of Beit Shlomo Choshem Mishpat, chapter 3, 132, Eleazar 3:65, and Kimdat Israel Hilkot Malachim 9:7. Topic number 12. Even if the mother has emotional justification for not wanting the pregnancy, for example, in cases of rape and incest, aborting the fetus is forbidden according to the severity of the prohibition of murder. And again, that's with these, there's possibilities of allowing, but it's really an exception. It's not the rule. Would be the possibilities of allowing. So overall, it's prohibited. If it is known that the child she is carrying will be born with a fatal illness or defect, it is nevertheless forbidden to abort the fetus, and one who does so is a murderer. Igrit Moshe Choshen Mitpat, Volume 2, Chapter 30, chapters 69 and 71. Sirdui Aish, Volume 1, Chapter 162. Permits abortion for a Jew in the first 40 days if the child will have a permanent illness or defect that will impede normal living. It appears that the same applies to Gentiles, and there is an allowance for them to do so, but the request for this permission should be judged very carefully because of the severity of the prohibition of murder. So it can be looked at, it can be considered in the first month, where if there is the feeling of need, it has to be a serious need, then the abortion can be done in the first month, but that would definitely be the exception. The rule is that abortion would be forbidden even in the first month. It would appear that if it is medically proven that a fetus will miscarry and not born alive, or if it will be born but will die within 30 days, then one who transgresses and aborts such a fetus is not liable to capital punishment from a court of law. In accordance with the case when it is medically determined that a fetus would be a short-lived non-viable birth, as explained in topic 14, liability to capital punishment for abortion applies to the aborted fetus that is expected to live. So responsa of Radvaz, Volume 2, Chapter 695, in regard to Jews. So it medically proven might be that's an odd term, but here it says medically determined might be better. If the doctors determine within the parameters that they're able to determine that the fetus is not viable, that means it would either be miscarried, it would be a stillborn, or it would die within 30 days, then it would be allowed for an abortion. And it's within this topic, it seems that it's talking about within the first 40 days. Perhaps beyond that, it's not clear the way it's written here, whether that refers to the 40 days or after the 40 days. Topic number 13. A pregnant woman whose life is at risk because of her pregnancy is permitted to have an abortion. And as we discuss more in topic 3.7 below. All of the above concerns abortion. However, the use of contraceptive methods is permissible for Gentiles, will be explained in chapter 9. That's in the further in the area there. There's a discussion of contraception. Concerning chapter 3, topic 7 below, that's regarding the pursuer. A person that inadvertently is not because the person is pursuing another person, but the person's existence can cause death to another person, depending on the circumstance. In this case, if the fetus's existence can cause death to the mother, then it is permitted to abort the fetus. Topic number 14. One who kills a born child that could not have lived for 30 days after birth due to a serious illness or defect is exempt from liability to capital punishment. Nevertheless, it is still forbidden to do so within the prohibition of murder. So it would not be a Torah violation that would be handled by a court of law at that point, unless the courts determine that they're going to get involved with that. But it's not a Torah obligation for the court to get involved in that case. It would still be forbidden, and it would be handled through the heavenly court. This is the ruling of Rambam, Laws of Murders 2:6 regarding the Jew. In Minhag Kinach, Commandment 34, and Maharam Sheikh Orakaim, chapter 142, writes that the same applies to a Gentile. The difference between the non-viable child and a mortally wounded living person, whose murder would be liable to capital punishment, and that'll be discussed in the next tomorrow's reading concerning euthanasia, is that the mortally wounded person has already gained the distinction of a viable living, as opposed to a newborn child that is emerged so unhealthy that it cannot gain the distinction of viable living. This is explained by Sidi Chimid Maharit Gimel Parit Hasadah, chapter 9, topic 3. The ruling is unclear regarding a fetus that will certainly be born prematurely and then placed in an incubator, especially nowadays when there is a very good chance that it will fully develop. As to whether a Gentile who aborts this fetus is liable to capital punishment, on the other hand, this fetus should be considered as living, since it is a better chance for survival after its premature birth than a mortally wounded person. Conversely, an underdeveloped fetus that will be born prematurely does not yet have the potential to be born as a viable living person. This ruling is likewise unclear regarding a woman who died with a 9-month-old fetus still in her womb. One who destroys this fetus is one who destroys this fetus liable to capital punishment, since it is possible the fetus to be pulled out alive from the mother's body. Or is he exempt from capital punishment, since the fetus would die if it is left alone? It appears that in both cases, one who aborts the fetus is exempt from capital punishment because it will not be born as a viable living person, as can be seen from the Responsa of Ravaz, volume 2, chapter 695. So in this case, if the fetus goes through the normal development and the mother is healthy and the fetus is healthy, and it is expected, medically determined, it's expected that if everything goes properly as normally would, that the fetus will be born and will live. Then it is by Torah law, the court is obligated to, by Torah, to execute the person who kills the fetus. If something happens with the fetus or with the mother where the fetus would not normally live, then it would not be obligated to the court to execute someone that killed the fetus. Even if with modern medicine we're able to change that. However, that's because modern medicine is coming outside of what would be considered normal development, unless it was understood that modern medicine is part of normal development, which makes this a gray area. The courts for a society determines laws to handle these areas. The courts have to think it through and determine what is going to work best in their society, and will make rules accordingly based upon what makes sense. So there's areas that are clear Torah mandated areas, such as a normal, in the case of normal fetal development, if something is considered murder or is not considered liability, would not be considered a human court liability for murder, there's clear Torah law, and then there is the gray area that is to be handled by the courts to determine based on technology of the time and that. So even if it is not by Torah law prohibited to kill the infant that is born prematurely and could live if placed in an incubator, the court would make rules concerning what is proper in that situation. If, however, the child could live for at least 30 days after birth, even if only through medical intervention, it is considered viable, and one who kills it is liable to capital punishment. So I would suggest this is still a gray area that would require much thought. We just had a long footnote that indicated that it would not be mandated upon the court, and then the divine code says that it would be mandated upon the court. So logically, it should be mandated upon the court, and whether that is a Torah obligation on the court to execute the person in that case, or if it's something the court determines on its own, either way, by all logic, it should be prohibited to kill a child who needs an incubator to live. Thank you.